Pope Francis faced a lot of criticism, especially on his comments on the Palestine-Israel conflict and LGBT. But he took and accepted criticism, because that's what a leader should do. Now, our leaders today, if your skin is paper thin, that any public scrutiny permeates to your bone marrow, you have no business in a public office. You have no business whatsoever. You public officials, here present and those absent, you must be willing to suffer a small inconvenience of public criticism as a part of accountability. This motherland is big enough for all of us. I was taught at Makerere Law School that you invite your critics to the Makerere Law School auditorium for a debate, but you don't send them into exile. A judicial officer who does not deliver a ruling for a year or two does not only have a problem, she or she has a humongous problem. If you are paid to work between 9 and 5, but you report to work at 11 and leave at 3, you are worse than a shoplifter. You are lifting our time. Pope Francis preached against corruption and greed and lived that preaching. You, our leaders, if you steal money meant for our health sector, you are worse than a mass murderer, because people are going to steal to die because you stole. If you are stealing money meant for our roads, as you eat food from that route, please remember the smell of the water in those potholes. Maybe that can make you uncomfortable enough to stop stealing and stick to the legacy of Pope Francis. Pope Francis devoted himself to service. Please devote yourself to service of the people and not service of yourself. Like Pope Francis, our leaders must demonstrate simplicity as opposed to opulence. These days, there are more lead cars than ambulances. There are more leaders taking business class trips around the globe, other than trips to the lowest classes of our society in poor neighborhoods, which was a known habit of Pope Francis. Pope Francis chose to live in a modest guest house next to a lavish papal residence that his predecessors occupied. Our leaders today steal from the poor to build for themselves palaces. That is not his legacy, if we must remember. Pope Francis, in death, he preferred a modest send-off and a simple tomb without ornamentation. With only his name, Francis, a simple reminder to all of us that when all is gone, all you own is your simple one name and not your big titles. Imagine Pope could have chosen to be buried in St. Peter's Basilica, but he chose to go and get buried at a simple chapel where he held his private prayers. Imagine what would happen today if you allowed our leaders the opportunity, all of them, to be buried at Kororo. I'm sure some of them would choose to commit suicide early enough to go and get better plots before others arrive. Pope Francis' legacy is that he strived to take the church closer to the people. But some government leaders today are taking government far from the people by actions and inactions. Pope Francis will be replaced in just 20 days. He will be replaced. And certainly, he will not be replaced by his son, daughter, or any relative. If it was our politicians, they would all now have already lined up a relative to replace the other one under the guise of completing the dead politician's agenda. That is not his legacy. Pope Francis championed justice for the poor and vulnerable. But today, one office, particularly in Uganda, has become a clearing agent to lock up thousands of Ugandans. 4 years before trial, they are filling in our jails from Luzira to Chitaria down. That is not the legacy of Pope Francis. Pope Francis was broad-minded. He asked us to broaden our minds as leaders, and let us do so in Uganda. Broaden our minds and serve our people regardless of clan, creed, or tribe. May the Lord bless the soul of Pope Francis, and may the Lord bless this nation. I thank you.